So, welcome again, everybody. We started a bit late. We're supposed to go for until 1:50. I'm going to propose that we extend it by 10 minutes, since after that is the break anyway. So,
Yep.
Everyone's for it? Great. Okay, let's show those twinkle fingers. Now we're in an occupied meeting. If it's all right, I just want to take a minute for a couple of comments. What you both had to say, which I thought was very, very interesting. It's so much more substantive in some ways than my own thoughts on this. I noticed, Nellie, you talked about the political machine and the real estate developers and how the power really is. We've learned a great deal about it in Astoria, but we have no idea yet about how to confront it. And maybe we should have from the beginning, because we have Vallone there, who's Mr. Stop and Frisk personified. But clearly you're dealing with, we all live in Astoria, and we've been there generally for years, but maybe we're like, I felt like you're much more tied to the neighborhood in Harlem than we are in Astoria. I got that impression, and that's a difference in the circumstances of each neighborhood, perhaps, the economic circumstances to start with. I heard kind of from both of you the problem of how often it's one or two or four or five people who have to do everything. They do it with cheers and the enthusiasm of many others, and what they get for it is cheers and enthusiasm. That's the pay as well. But you keep running into this problem, that people are all for it, but in the end, very few people have to do the work, and there's always the danger of burnout. I remember at the very beginning with Occupy Astoria, we had all these working groups, and we were having 4 meetings a week when you said 2 meetings a week, but that was only for a few months. Especially when it turned into all the working groups were roughly the same people coming. One remarkable thing that you said, was that you've been involved in the Golden Farm struggle for a year now, I guess, continuously. I think that is extremely important. It's very serious organizing work, and can be very wearying because it's just one thing over and over and over again, and but so rewarding. We never really got into one thing like that. We've had like 12 different spectacular things at times, but not entirely like that. One thing we have been involved in was working with the teachers against the school closures and the corporate reform. That has been kind of a longer theme, but we just keep coming back to things. Another thing I noticed is both of you had immigrant groups that you've worked with, Bangladesh, Haiti. We have the Greeks, that we've worked with a great deal in Astoria. So that's always something that can and should be happening in New York, and also leads a way into much greater involvement in people, because people just do identify as their group, as their ethnic identity. I think you both definitely brought up the importance of general vision and education, and looking way past just the local neighborhood, and the interest that this inspires, and how people want to come in and talk about things like Haiti and the indefinite detention and so forth. So next, I was going to suggest that we just do the intros finally, now that everyone has showed up, probably.
Want to watch this right quick? I don't want to throw it off too much, but we also have
This is the left form. We don't do triangles.
Okay, sorry.
The triangles
Love.
are
We have Occupy Sunset Park here too, so I guess somewhere along the line.
I was going to suggest, right after the intros, that we get reports from other occupies who are present, and then we ask one question that we want to have a kind of starter to the conversation, and see where it leads. So we've got an hour from this point. So introductions, and then reports from other occupies, having heard what we've heard so far from the 3, Harlem, Kensington, and Astoria. My name is Nick Levise with Occupy Astoria, as well as the Greece Solidarity Movement. And shall we go this way?
Okay, so I'm Cora. I'm originally from Spain, and now I'm a member here of Socialist Alternative.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm a member now of Socialist Alternative here, but I'm originally from Spain.
Oh, I'm Smumba. Most of you, some of you know me, from Occupy Wall Street, as well as a group called Occupy Evolved. We started to help to do coordination between the occupied as well as organized citywide.
Tim. I'm with Occupy Kensington.
Could you speak a little louder?
My name is
please?
Tim. I'm with Occupy Kensington.
Hi, my name is Frank. I'm from Syracuse, New York. I consider myself an occupier, though I wasn't particularly involved in the General Assemblies in Syracuse. And I think this brings up one of the things that I'm interested in learning about more people's experiences is those folks who were first-time activists through Occupy versus those of us who were already engaged activists and didn't have time to necessarily be involved in General Assemblies of Occupy, and how those two sides of the coin affect now the continuing movement.
My name's Nick. I'm from Southern Illinois, or I live in Southern Illinois. I was active in Occupy St. Louis and Occupy Carbondale, the town I live in. I'm engaged in a kind of long-term research project about the Occupy movement, and that's a question that I'm really interested in as well.
My name is Ian. I'm active in Occupy Sunset Park almost since its very beginning. I'm also a supporter of the Kasama Project.
I'm sorry of the.
Kasama Project, which makes me a communist.
What is that?
What is
It's
a sentence?
project for the reconception and regroup, a communist project for reconception and regroupment in the 21st century. There you go. I'm here for Occupy Sunset Park.
Lisa Nauer, and I've been involved in Occupy Sunset Park since just actually this weekend.
Yeah.
Sunset Park. And Occupy Kensington formed just as I moved out of Kensington after having lived there for 11 years and didn't know any political people in Kensington in 11 years in the neighborhood of Flatbush.
We'll all come out of the woodwork now.
Got involved in Occupy Sunset Park because that was the one neighborhood Occupy in Brooklyn that was somewhat close and that I knew about. So I've been commuting my activism to Sunset Park for the last year.
My name is Rob Hollander. I live in the East Village, or Elizabeth City. I got involved with Occupy before September 17th because I had the meetings at Tompkins Square Park, although I never believed that it would really fly. And then I got involved in the no co-option documents that also never flew because the General Assembly never could approve anything. But I've kept involved, maybe somewhat marginally, through Old Bank, that's how I'm Nick. But I also have a group now that is resisting chain stores and corporate control in New York. It's called No 7-Eleven because it was a very local issue for 11th Street. And I'd love to talk more about it, and I have lots of questions as well when we have a chance to talk.
Okay, I'm Joan Plune. I'm at this point not active in any Occupy. I belong to the Granny Peace Brigade. After Zuccotti went belly up, I think basically we went back into, well, we were there all the time. We kept doing our peace work while Zuccotti was going on. I've been active in Syracuse. I was arrested at Hancock Air Force Base last month. That's what we do. There's no Occupy near me, and I'm not quite sure how I would fit into it at this point if there were. I live in downtown Brooklyn.
Hi, my name is Ted. I'm with Occupy Astoria, Long Island City. I guess that's it for now.
Mark from Occupy Astoria as well.
I'm Scotty Embry. I just retired, so during Occupy, I was working on, 7 to 9 job. But I've been active in the past, more in the role of getting groups together around labor or community issues, particularly health and safety.
My name is Michael Krasner. I teach political science at Queens College. I'm a long-distance commuter from Vermont, where I work with the Progressive Party and have a long-time interest in grassroots democracy.
My name is Martine, and I'm involved right now in the Stop and Frisk work in the city, and I live in Brooklyn.
In what?
In the Stop and Frisk campaigns.
I'm Sophia. I'm both in Occupy Kensington, which is where I live, and Occupy Astoria, which is where I work.
My name is Duff McIntosh. I'm an anarchist communist. I've been an activist in West Virginia for 40 years and moved to New York right about the time that Zuccotti took off. But I'm in Washington Heights and like to connect with people up there.
Nellie Hester Bailey, Occupy Harlem.
I'm Jane Schroeder. My apartment is in what's left of the West Village, which isn't very much where I live. I'm a 60s person, and I suppose my political culture, a lot of my political culture is the 60s, not nostalgically. Not at all nostalgic. And I never did get involved with Occupy, but I'm very curious about it, especially about participatory decision-making processes, which I've had experience with prior to Occupy, and frankly, I never want to go to another meeting that isn't facilitated. Because it's just too much fun. See, I told you I was a 60s person.
I'm Lisa, so I'm originally French, but I've been living in the US for a long time now. And I've been involved mostly in like the Occupy Wall Street labor groups, like LOC, 19 pickets, and basically doing labor-related action in New York.
I'm Eleanor. In addition to being in Occupy Kensington, I'm in Socialist Alternative along with Cora. Socialist Alternative, is an existing Trotskyist organisation. Like all of the old left, we headed to Zuccotti Park, along with everybody else who wants to make a difference, fight for change. And I find it interesting, when a large movement like that takes off, of course, these small, hardcore, self-educated left groups head in to try and make an impact within what suddenly was a large movement. There wasn't, we couldn't make a big impact in, and that was fantastic. It was wonderful. It's what I've been waiting for 20 years, for the movement to be large enough not to notice us. It was great. Totally in contradiction to being like 15 and put on every youth committee in sight because I was the only person who turned up to union meetings who was under 35. Socialist Alternative, there's too many different bits of Occupy to be involved in, so we tried to spread out amongst ourselves and only try and go to this bit, that bit, and so on. And as it turns out, the two bits of Occupy in New York City that we have become deeply involved in or been involved in over a long period of time are Occupy Astoria and Occupy Kensington. And that is where these local occupies is where we found real practical on the ground work going on that we felt was really of use in doing something. And in different, we were national, we had different experiences in other cities. Not in Minneapolis, Occupy Homes is where the Occupy movement really found, like stopping the reclamation of homes is where it's really spearheaded in Minneapolis. And that's an interesting thing for us. The reason I'm going on about us is actually because I want to get the point to have a national perspective as well about like how Occupy in different cities has found different places to keep going, where is the sharp end of the work that we can be focused on. And it is interesting just to look outside the city as well.
My name is Tom Angati. I teach urban planning at Hunter College in the Graduate Center, and I've been involved in a lot of struggles, fighting real estate and supporting communities to develop their own visions. And most recently, I've been involved with an Occupy group in the Rockaways. It's looking into building alternatives.
I'm still Nicholas. Probably the most exciting moment for me in Occupy was right after the eviction of Zuccotti Park, where there was that very large demonstration here. 20,000 people were out on the streets, and since the 80s I'd been getting older together with the movement that I was constantly a part of. So it's very exciting to suddenly see that almost everybody, or most of the people, were younger than me, much younger than me, and in their 20s and teens. And that was just a beautiful moment. And I am excited. I think it is the beginning of something, but it's going to take 10, 20 years. So don't expect it tomorrow.
Optimist.
Yeah, I know. I used to say, in the 80s, I used to say, in 5 years everything's going to fall apart and there will be a revolution. So good luck. So now we're going to, as long as no one objects, because this is Occupy, we're going to impose a cruel order in which there is a stopwatch for 2 minutes. Why? Because we're going to open up the conversation to everybody. So let's give everybody a chance with the 50 minutes that we have left. And the first thing was going to be who would like to report back from their own neighborhood assembly. And I hear Sunset Park, for example, has now entered the house. So, and also if we've already reported about Kensington or Astoria, but if you're from Kensington or Astoria and want to add something, that's fine too. Okay, or Harlem. So, right, I can't get the stopwatch to work. Well, anyway, who would like to?
Occupy Sunset Park was formed in October of 2011 by some long-term activists in the neighborhood. Sunset Park is traditionally an immigrant neighborhood, was built as a neighborhood for immigrants from northern and southern Europe. In the 60s, transitioned to a neighborhood of largely Puerto Rican immigrants. Has now become half a neighborhood of immigrants from China and Southeast Asia, and half a neighborhood of Latin American immigrants encroached upon by gentrifying white people. The first thing that Occupy Sunset Park really, I find so much. First of all, I just wanted to say how much I find what you said resonating with our experiences, almost like month per month, in terms of what you described is really interesting to me. We decided very early on that we wanted to try and be as responsive to the community as possible. The majority of people involved in Occupy Sunset Park were younger white people, but not everybody. But we had this really strong sense of obligation to take the concerns of the community in the neighborhood really seriously. And that ultimately really paid off to the point where when we were still having GAs towards the end, and when we've had special meetings, we've actually conducted many of our meetings entirely in Spanish, which has been a really awesome experience. And I think it's one of the things that I feel most proud of is our really strong attempt to talk to the people who actually live in the community about issues that are a concern to them. We really haven't focused so much on national issues there. We addressed, we got involved in sort of short campaigns over Head Start program, over after-school programs. The longest thing we've been involved in supporting is a rent strike, which most people have probably heard of, which is still going on in some form. We've held movie showings. We've held sort of same sort of things that you did. We did in Occupy Town Square. It was really cool. The two biggest events we had were a Unity. We called them Unity Days, which for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. The first one in 2012 was at least 300 people. And the second one this year was smaller, but still probably almost 200 people. And those were also conducted entirely bilingually, which was, so we're not having GAs anymore. We want to figure out how to stay open and accessible. We're now, a core groups are trying to figure out. The space issue is key, and we had a relationship with the church that gave us space that we lost, and that really has been the biggest challenge for us to keep going. So,
thank you. By the way, if you see me doing this, it's just a gentle way of saying the 2 minutes are up. Wrap it up.
I wasn't affected.
Without interrupting. Anyone else want to report? Would anyone else like to report from a neighborhood occupied? Okay, so we've had 4. Kensington, Harlem, Astoria, and Sunset Park. Very good. Let's pick an agenda item. Let's ask the one question. Let's have suggestions for what the one question is that we should now ask to start a conversation into the future. After all that we've heard now about neighborhood occupies, about Occupy in general, about the difficulties of organizing, the difficulties of getting movements together. What should we be discussing here? What is the future of this neighborhood assembly phenomenon? Nellie.
Well, certainly the media has had its burial service for the Occupy movement. There doesn't seem to be any question about that, although they were hesitant but quick to admit that the American conversation would never be the same in terms of the Occupy movement and its impact on the national discussion. So that's one thing, but it is quickly fading away, the Occupy movement. When you think of these whole new generations that are coming up, and I'm just so amazed, kids out of high school and college, and it's sort of like a whole group of people in front of you, and you're like, what? And they don't, I mean, they don't even have any memories of Bugs Bunny, you know what I mean? And so, so the thing is, on a much more serious note here is, how do we, you can't recreate what has happened. So obviously, I'm not saying that because we can't go back and recreate that. But what we do know in moving ahead with the austerity budget, the austerity measures that are coming up, and that impact on the proletariat class, the working class, is key to how we can begin to redefine ourselves and set new agendas based on the analysis that we have already given, or what has already been forthcoming from the Occupy movement. So in other words, we don't have to reinvent the wheel in terms of critical thinking and analysis, but we do have to re-strategize, if you will, in terms of moving ahead in conditions worse than when we started Occupy Wall Street, with what's coming down on us. And so that would be central to any discussion for me.
Sorry, I was
Ron.
calling. No, I was calling on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You both raised your hand at the same time. I'm very sorry. And then you, Rob. Sorry.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a more pragmatic question, which is, how, for me, one of the reasons for coming to this session instead of all the 50 other meeting sessions that are offered simultaneously until our forum today, was, right, so how can we take this how can we develop some kind of cross-fertilization and linking and dialogue between, I think there's a tremendous strength to being very neighborhood-based and neighborhood-focused, but I think that, aside from like seeing each other's notifications on Facebook, we don't really have a whole lot of interaction with each other, and part of why it is to meet some of the other neighborhood occupiers. I think it would be great if we could figure out some way of keeping the conversation going and thinking about how we link our work, the local work, with something larger, without trying to create something artificial that doesn't exist, recreate something.
Rob.
There are two things. One is how we can use social media, really back on what you were saying, to connect with our local struggles, but also to promote the victories that we are having. Because I think this is really the issue that you're addressing about the media. That nobody knows that there are victories here on the very local level. That's really important to empower other local localities.
Thank you. Sorry, Tom was next, and I should take stack 1, 2, 3. So, I'm sorry. We'll just do that. Tom.
It seems like, particularly under the Bloomberg administration, neighborhoods have faded away as active entities that have any relationship to real decision-making by government. And I think constructing a horizontal decision-making capacity at neighborhood level and then linking these really ought to be strategic for gaining political power in this city. It's the only way to start, from the bottom up. And it's the weakest point of this system, and Sandy demonstrated the incapacity of city government to really deal with people's neighborhoods and communities, other than in a paternalistic way, charitable way, or using the police, its police power. So to me, this is really, I don't know if we have time to do this kind of thing across different neighborhoods, because that it's very uneven, I think, from one. And I'm leaving out, of course, Riverdale and Brooklyn Heights and Upper East Side of Manhattan. Those are neighborhoods we're not talking about. Those we're talking about, neighborhoods where real working people live.
Sir, sorry, I can't see your name.
Duff.
Duff.
Yeah, I was actually repeating what she said and you said. Is I'm not even involved in an assembly, but it'd be good to hear what's going on. Maybe some sort of media or meetings, like co-meetings of different branches getting together, going to each other's meetings, or some way of communicating more with each assembly neighborhood group, but also to the outside world, people who aren't involved who might want to hook in somehow.
I'm sorry?
Jane.
Jane.
Yeah. I just want to throw it out that I think that there's something going on now that social movements have evolved to the point where there's an intuitive sense that local doesn't mean parochial. And that I think that that's what we're groping around and trying to understand, that what that is. And I think for myself personally, that it has a personal element to it. I mean, to make a long story short, I was a pretty smart-ass, brilliant white lefty in the 60s in New York City, and I didn't pay any attention to the Horatio Street Association. I didn't poo-poo it, right?
I'm sorry, to Horatio Street
I
Association?
live on Horatio Street in the West Village.
Right.
I mean, the West Village is probably one of the most organized of the block associations. And I didn't pay any attention to the Horatio Street Association. I was out organizing with, I did some important work, stuff, but I wasn't really thinking of what I needed. And what I need is a community. I want to be part of a community. And I don't want it just to be Occupy. I don't want it just to be a lefty thing where I have lefty things in my head. Okay? I want to have real relationships in my communities, communicative relationships with all kinds of people. And to then be able to communicate with other people who need those same things. So that's what I'm saying about that it's intuitive. But I don't want to booster the, wherever it is, Crown Heights, Bushwick, West Harlem, blah, blah, blah. I don't need that, but I do need community. And I think that's where, I also really resonate with the whole issue was on organizing and using some kinds of inclusive ways of doing participatory decision-making processes to do that and create trust and accountability.
One of the problems we had in Occupy is people sometimes don't understand the difference between soapboxing and us getting to staying on point. And we have 35 minutes now. So my thing is, where do we make a mistake at with Occupy in terms of organizing? There's issues going on everywhere, from the rent strike to gentrification to Golden Farms. There's only 4 Occupies that exist that do regular GAs right now. The only Occupy that's not here is Staten Island. And there's an election coming up, mayor. So there's a lot that we can organize around.
So 4 are here who have general assemblies.
Right, that meet regularly. They still meet regularly. It's about 4 that still do that.
Plus Staten Island is 5. Sorry to interrupt.
Right. Well, Sunset Park's not doing, I'm still saying that does regular duty. There's Queens that's not here. Jackson.
Queens, there's 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so please.
But those that read regularly is like 4. So anyway, so I was saying, I guess for the little time that we have left, we're going to 2 o'clock? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 32 minutes. So I guess learning from our mistakes and how we can connect community struggles to some of the bigger issues coming on with the election. There's also this thing with the Mayor Bloomberg has appointed Seth Pinsky from Goldman Sachs to manage $90 billion in Sandy relief. I mean, that's a struggle. And there's forums coming up about that we need to get people into. There's a lot of things going on. So how do we connect local struggles to overall community? When I hear horizontal and inclusive decision making, I just wish I could show some streams from some of the meetings we had at Occupy Wall Street. We don't have the General Assembly as a result of that. Everybody making choices and everybody's included. Everybody. Ray Kelly people too. Anyway, that's it.
All right, I was going to suggest, since you brought up this matter of where do we go from here, we're not going to solve all problems today, but everyone should get on this email list so that we can just send around the video of this and maybe suggest some kind of follow-up. For example, that our 4 groups could have a joint General Assembly, and try to work out some kind of joint action or strategy. So I'll pass it around. Oh, you've got one?
I got a better looking one.
You've got a better looking one. And a clipboard.
And
This
a
man comes
clipboard,
prepared.
too.
Okay. Does anyone have a non-red pen that you could share? Okay. So great. And that you could also pass around with that. So thank you. So, yes.
I have a statement / question for the group. I don't know if this is the time to do that, or were you about to move on to something else?
Well, I don't know.
It's something that I'm very curious about.
What is it about?
Well, it's about this kind of horizontal decision making, and what I seem to be seeing like a pattern of is like some people being very, very drawn to that, and some people being absolutely, completely turned off by it in every way.
Yes.
And one of the things that I want to suggest that I've kind of observed is that like it seems like that was this moment that created all of this like pouring of affect, pouring of emotion, and formed all of these new relationships and was completely inspiring, and it needs to be given credit for that. But on the other hand, when it comes down to these kind of very like daily nitty-gritty commitment sort of struggle things, it seems to be falling apart. And I'm wondering if anybody has explored the idea, and maybe the Kensington idea was similar to this, of finding a way to both have that need for the de-atomizing, as you had said, need for like building these kind of community forums that give people a chance to express themselves, actually learn how to listen to one another, and build those kind of ties. And then separate from that, you're organizing in your affinity group, which maybe follows whatever organizational tools you like. Has anybody like experimented with different ways to mix those two things and separate them out?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my question.
So what's stacked right now? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
I mean, this is sort of related to that idea. I think, if I understood it correctly, the group that I'm involved with, I think there are a lot of people who are involved with Occupy, and we have a horizontal model. And my question is always, how do you use that consensus model and still be strategic and not have it result in people sort of fracturing off into a million different issues? And there are a million different issues that we could all work on, but clearly there's a sense of struggle and values that all unite us. And so how do you use a process where there is consensus built, but build towards something, a single focus that more people can sort of rally around? So I don't know if that's related to what you're talking about, but it's something that I'm thinking about a lot, and I don't have an answer.
I want to say first, Simone did not do a good enough plug for the organisation that he runs, Occu-Evolve. Several people come in and ask questions basically about how local occupiers could connect with each other more, and I think there's a real problem there. I mean, definitely in Occupy Kensington, we have a bunch of people in Occupy Kensington the chances of them getting them to leave Kensington to engage in political activity are very, very low. I mean, I for one of the reasons I got involved in local politics was because I had 2 small children and I could no longer do all the sort of running around the city I'd done before. I can organise Occupy Kensington in 2 hours on Friday morning after I drop my son off from school. I walk home, I drop off at Sue's house, I go to, you know, like that's how it's done. And getting them to come out of the neighbourhood, there's people we can get out of the neighbourhood, there's people we can't. But Samumba has played an absolutely invaluable role. Him and people from OccuEvolve, they attend almost all of our meetings and they report to us what they're hearing from other GAs that they've been attending and what they hear. You know, they're going to a whole bunch of Occupy meetings, they also go to labour-related meetings and so on, and they basically have tried to report back to us what they consider to be the key things happening in wider Occupy. So we're allowing them to filter, you know, we may have missed some stuff that we'd have been interested in, some didn't think was great, but, you know, I don't know, but at least he's providing that link for us, and that has been invaluable over the time. I mean, Occupy Astoria came out to us once to help with the Golden Farm picket when we were at a really low ebb, and I think that was in part because of Samumba raising that with people. I mean, I think it came from 7 places, but I think that was part of it. He certainly pushed us to go to Sunset Park, and we never did. You know, but he produces a list every week of events that OccuEvolve thinks are good events, and it is really worth checking out. Aside from that plug, I just wanted to say, just on OccuEvolve,
I should have a flyer right in
this
front
flyer
of
we
me.
just got. There, he was advertising himself. On the models for horizontal or consensus and all that stuff, I have to admit, Occupy Kensington doesn't do any of that stuff. We don't even do this. We just have a strip of there's somebody chairs the meeting, there's somebody who does a long introduction, everybody puts their hand up, somebody decides who's taking turns, and we try and shut people up if they go on too long. And we're a reasonably cohesive group of people. Like we haven't had massive gulfs of agreement within the group. It's a smallish group, so we've never really had to test it. But broadly speaking, we operate on a sensitive majority rules. That is to say, our goal is to get complete consensus. But if we reach a point where there's 1 or 2 individuals in the room who just aren't going to agree with this, we can move on with it as an agreement. That would be different if 1/3 of the people in the room didn't agree. I think then we're going to have to get into that at some point. But.
Sensitive majority rule.
Yeah, like one thing that we practice, we fought for in the beginning. I come out of Occupy Wall Street, a couple groups, movement building, vision and goals, and outreach. And one thing that if anybody attended our assembly, I'm not making this up, you can go to the stream and look for yourself. A lot of them devolved into fist fighting, devolved into all kind of verbal disrespect amongst each other. And I think one of the assemblies that pushed a lot of people away from Occupy was that jobs bill. It was 34-16 vote, but that wasn't the consensus model of 90%. And we had got to a point where we started asking questions. OccuEvolve. We didn't start as a group. We didn't want to be a group. We just want to go back to our work and make Occupy work. And then we found out they worked. Somebody said, hey, you should start a thing called OccuEvolve. So, and then somebody in that group named Jack Rabbit, who works with us behind the scenes, said we should use a consent, don't do voting. We do what we call is values-based consensus, which means that we make decisions based on the values that we create together. And one thing that we've been talking about lately is a coalition with the Black is Back coalition that Nellie is part of, and we've been having some issues back and forth because a lot of people don't know what the group is, but there's nothing in the principles of unity or their structure that goes against the values and our mission statement. So technically, so we're trying to get somebody to come and speak to us, but technically we can make a decision based on our values that they're already part of or that we're already in coalition. We just have to make it official and pay $50. So we just found this whole horizontal thing that people took it to the extreme. People took the inclusiveness to the extreme, where we're not going to kick you out because you're a person of color, but we're not going to kick you out because you're a homeless person, even though you just knocked over a computer at the rec forum, or even though you just potentially raped someone. I mean, it really got that bad. We had women that were raped in the park, So it was really bad. So we just said that we can't do things. We have to have a bar of membership. So we've used that model as well. So we don't really use voting. You can't block. The whole group has to block. It can't be a personal, ideological thing. And I came into the movement as an African internationalist. And I realized I couldn't, this isn't like just a black movement, it's a 99% movement. So I had to fall, people didn't know my politics till like about a month ago. So I think that was the thing, trying to create a 99% movement is something that has never been done. I still don't know how those numbers work out. So it's very hard. I don't know, like, cause like we're all not 99%. It's not just the 1%, it's also the 10%. So I've worked with every assembly and I went around working not because I wanted to dominate or control. I'm still homeless, I sleep on couches when I can. I don't have any money in my pocket. But they were like, we need a person with digital outreach, OWS. We need someone to go organize in different occupiers to let them know we're not all white, you know. That's how it started. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be around these general assemblies where they're fighting anyway. And that's why I started going around now, not because I'm trying to dominate. So anyway, I want to tell a little bit more. We are the only coordinating body in Occupy Wall Street that does outreach for all the Occupy and Occupy in general. I'm sorry, I'm not talking. Sorry.
No, that's great. You know, I just want to point out, first of all, you're doing great work, but you know, Occupy Astoria calls picnics, and occupiers come from all over.
This
so
is the largest Occupy.
outreach.
They did the first ever Occupy picnic.
This is
it. It was great.
In-reach, as we call it.
The largest Occupy.
You know, there's outreach to the world and in-reach
And they have
to
a
the
cafe.
world of Occupy.
You have a cafe coming too.
Ian, and then I will call myself.
I want to just try to make 3 quick points. In Occupy Sunset Park, since we have sort of devolved to a closer core group, I don't know what our process is, but like we all really like each other, and like so it's kind of like we come to a group decision. It's not formally consensus, but you know, we know that we're going to have to do it. So like we don't, you know, decide to do things that we can't personally commit to. So it kind of works out. We're not really hung up on process, and I think we haven't been all along, which has actually been good. The 2 other things I want to say, I feel like, you know, after a huge successful movement, it's kind of like, you know, the popping of a balloon and everybody's going like, oh my God, what now? And I feel like there is a huge tendency right now to be really hard on each other about all sorts of things, and I think that that's really destructive. And what I am personally really interested in right now is in finding ways to like not stepping back from being involved with stuff, but stepping back from like, you know, this sort of fever pitch of trying to figure out how to continue things, and to take a moment to talk about it, observe, and evaluate what's happened. And I think that there's a huge moment where we really have, I think, like to preserve the relationships with each other, because I bet it would take us 10 minutes to have a screaming argument in here about something if we really wanted to. But instead of doing that, you know, let's work on like understanding what happened and talking about, you know, what we still agree with and what our possibilities, and in the spirit of, you know, working together. And that's super important. And then the final thing I wanted to say was, you said when Zuccotti went belly up, the one thing I think we don't give enough credit to is that our movement was really the victim of mass coordinated repression from the government. And there are other things that happened also, like the pressure of elections and demoralization and stuff, but I think it's really, like, you know, the encampments were smashed nationwide, and that was a huge, you know, like physical like defeat and challenge that we survived in a different form. But I think like we should be doing more of patting ourselves on the back for still being around, rather than, you know, like, it's, we didn't do anything wrong. Like, you know, there was plenty of problems at all those encampments, but you know, they didn't end because they were out of steam or we were doing the wrong thing. They ended because they were, you know, smashed.
I didn't say occupy.
Right. So now it's just, you know, I think that's super important to have some perspective on.
I'm very glad you brought that up, Ian, because I think it's true. You know, in whatever form, maybe it would have turned into a disaster, but the encampments would have gone on, and 120 encampments were cleared simultaneously. So sorry, I had put myself on the list a while ago to speak. You know, horizontalism. I agree that was part of what got the whole thing going, because I've been to so many demonstrations at Wall Street that were basically jump, you fuckers, jump, you know, I mean, in the last 3 years, to you know, get anything started. It took 3 years, and I think it had a lot to do with the General Assembly concept and the fact that it was open and nobody knew what it was going to be, and also maybe the luck of discovering this Zuccotti. You know, the fact that it was a privately owned public park, required to be public, and 24 hours. that allowed it to kind of break out. And I think there is a place for horizontalism, especially in informal settings. This is why we need centers. This is why we need to do things like build the cafe project. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that, Ted, because you've been more involved. Not just the cafe project in Astoria, but everywhere. Try to find space. Try to get space that's permanent, where people can go anytime. And this allows people to have this this area where they can meet and get to know each other and work out all these issues informally and horizontally. But I think at the same time, yes, we need to have some kind of, it can be a new form of organization, but we need some kind of more formal organization. This brings me to 2 points I wanted to inject quickly, that are perpetual. And one is the corporate media and the other is the politicians. As far as corporate media is concerned, I think its future is to become entirely obsolescent and disappear. We have got to be focused always on providing the media. If the corporate media happens to take attention, to give attention to something that we do, great. We shouldn't even care usually, unless they're like slandering, unless they're libeling, unless you can sue them. We shouldn't even care on what they say. We should always be oriented to doing what Sophia is doing right now and getting that up as quickly as possible on YouTube, which I realize is also a very large corporation, Google. Getting it out there through the possibilities that internet offers us, and just think increasingly Fox News. The way it's going to be dealt with is that no one's going to be watching it at some point. They have half the audience that they had 2 years ago, and it's only going to get worse for them. So the hell with them. All of them, of course. And politicians, I feel a little bit differently. I feel like maybe we should be looking to get involved. Maybe there should be an Occupy candidate in every city council election. We're having the city council elections now. There will be no such thing as what I said. And maybe there should be. So, maybe we should think which politicians can we actually be friendly with, because there are politicians who approach us. We have that right now in Astoria, sort of thing with Costa and with Linda. Sorry, so next was Cora.
Yeah, so I was not here in Occupy, so I really didn't leave Occupy, but I have my experience in Spain with our 15M movement and the South movement. And yes, basically, more or less in the same way as happened here, was a huge movement at the beginning and then progressively decay. And right now, I think it's in a way starting to come back to life, and I think how it did it was because it started to be linked with different organizations that were, or different struggles that were already happening right now. For instance, they are working a lot with an organization against evictions. They are also working for defending the public education and public health. So I think that a little bit linking with the idea of someone mentioned before, like the idea of make brother the struggle and try to grow the movement, trying to take bigger spaces. I think that it's very important to keep alive the energy of the movement, to have like specific battles that allow us to feel that we are gaining something, that we are winning something, that we have power to reach or to gain our space. And I think in that sense, in Spain, what worked was like linking with different organizations, not only with Occupy base, but also with things that were already moving.
So Ted and who's Stack? Right. Well, I will add Frank. Ted first because he was on Frank. Stack. Frank. Okay. And Rob.
Lisa.
Lisa and Jane. And we're going to close Stack. Oh, Eleanor. Okay. And keep in mind it's 15 minutes. So, who did I say? Ted.
I'm somebody who was a first-time activist at Zuccotti Park. I went down September 19th and was really blown away by what I saw. So, I'm new to this game, and very gratefully so to be immersed in a lot of new ideas, and my life personally has changed so much in these last year and a half, 2 years. So I'm grateful for that. It's made me more engaged, more of a student. So someone alluded to earlier, like appreciating the small moments, and I always, try to find the balance between the micro and the macro, because I think it's so important, whether it's, you're talking about micro being these neighborhood occupies, or micro even talking about yourself. And I often reflect back onto Another World is Possible. I think that's an important thing to really take in, and because Another World is Possible starts with, how am I changing? What can I do? How can I relate more kindly, whether it's an email or an interaction? So I constantly think back to that phrase, Another World is Possible, on the micro level. And that's how it happens on the macro level. So certainly with Occupy Astoria, the things that we've done, we've had things, whether it's a bank action at Occupy the City, Citibank building, or things that are maybe perhaps a little more social in nature, the Occu Picnic, or our ongoing documentary film series. So I try to take away from each one of those actions, there's little moments that occur, a conversation. Mark made chili a couple weeks ago, and these little actions that people do. Someone mentioned Samumba earlier. His ubiquitous presence. People are all around us do these inspiring things, these beautiful things that embody Another World is Possible. So I try to really just reflect on those small moments, because I think that does ultimately build the larger movement. And I think, you talked about sometimes the air coming out of the balloon with the excitement of, that mass movement kind of dissipating. But I think, the conditions that cause those things are still there, and probably even, exacerbating. So we can't really know, like things that just popped off in Turkey, all over the country. We don't know what that next thing will be, but I think we know it will come. So for me, what I try to do, and what I'm so grateful about for Occupy Astoria, is that it is an opportunity to engage on the local level with community, and to appreciate these micro moments of building movement on the smaller level that has roots that you can't really quantify. Yeah.
Thank you, Ted. Just one question. When do you think, because you're much more involved in the cafe, when do you think it'll be ready to open in Astoria, the cafe?
The cafe, just quickly, again, here's a micro moments, right? Mark got 5,000 books from Tuli Kupferberg from the Fugs, counterculture musician, poet. His son was donating 5,000 books, heard that, Mark heard about him. He said, we'd love to give you these books. So all of a sudden we have 5,000 books. Well, now what do we do? Luigi, one of our members, has a space. He's like, I'll donate the space. So now we have a cafe that we're working on. So again, these, just to kind of illustrate that point of doing the next right thing, and then kind of the path unfolds. So to answer your question, we just started physical work on the space, and we're really excited about it. It's at a great little kind of nexus of, there's a community garden there, Socrates Sculpture Park, if those of you that are familiar with Astoria, but you'll all be invited when it's open. When will it be open? Probably mid to late summer, I would say.
Wow, so we're going to be able to invite everybody to the
Absolutely,
Occupy space.
We should invite everyone to the Wellington Court project, which is a art mural project happening right in the nexus of where we're going to open this place in Astoria. Next weekend, I think it is.
I think it's the 15th, yeah.
Is everyone all right with receiving an invitation to something, as well as to a follow-up meeting where we can get our different neighborhood assemblies and ask more explicitly what's next, what's the common strategy?
We'll be hanging out drinking beers together. Not
so
look up
Frank.
Look up Welling Court mural project.
Frank.
Thank you. Well, I'm very interested in your comment about political organizing in regards to Occupy. I'm a member of the Green Party of New York State and active locally in Syracuse, New York. And we have a number of candidates, and as far as similarities between policies and beliefs and so forth, the folks in Occupy are involved with. The Green Party comes very close. Can't say obviously this exactly the same, but it's very close. And so I would love to see more people from Occupy getting involved politically, locally at the same time. And so this brings me back to this issue and the other comments about horizontal versus vertical structures and so forth, and that I think one of the detriments of not having some sort of, being organized and having an organization of people is not the same as hierarchy necessarily. And so having people who are and can be identified as representatives of Occupy, who will then take that message back to or the group at large or the General Assembly. In the case in Syracuse, where there's not General Assemblies happening anymore now, I often don't know how to necessarily contact or who to contact, or when I go on the Facebook page that we have for Occupy there, kind of put the word out for people to come to this issue or action, or to come to be involved in this or that. But otherwise, it's if for Occupy to be involved, it's kind of like waiting for somebody to say, okay, I'm Occupy, and we're going to do this from Occupy. So it has to initiate there versus coming from outside, and saying, oh, Green Party's doing this, my permaculture organization is doing this, our credit union is doing, our CFI credit union is doing this, going to then somebody in Occupy, who does have, maybe a chair position, there's lots of ways that you can structure that organization. It's not hierarchical, but it is capable of creating more structure, even without active General Assemblies taking place on a regular basis. So I think moving forward, maybe postulating that idea and those concepts more to the local groups, whether it's here in New York City or wherever the case may be, about having more organization and more structure of some sort, is a way to make the potential for Occupy continuing and becoming more successful and more relevant. One strategy for here now.
Thank you. Time is cruel. We have 5 minutes left. I'm going to have to go too, unfortunately. So then, 4 speakers. So if you try to do it in a minute, I'm sorry to say, Rob.
Yeah, I want to talk about how to expand outside of Occupy, connecting with other organizations, using, like you have a labor issue right there to connect with other labor organizations. That's a great opportunity to have targeted events, and then look at other groups that want to get involved in. The Resistance Against Exchange Stores, for example, started on 11th Street because 7-Eleven was going to open on 11th Street and Avenue A, and immediately the East Village Community Coalition, which has a local shopping guide, they were very interested in that because they wanted to promote small businesses. So it's an opportunity. These targeted events can actually bring in other organizations, and also something for decades of organizing. What I see is the thing that brings most people are actually not in my backyard issues and pocket issues. So even the CUNY student movement was huge. We had 20,000 students in City Hall, but that was really a pocketbook issue. So it's an opportunity to ride a wave. And one of the ways is something that Tom Angadi was mentioning. There's a tenants organization, right? That's very top down. Mike McGee's, what is it called? Tenants and neighbors. Yeah, it's very top down, and it will never have any more success than it ever has had because it's not bottom up. Some years ago, we tried to have a citywide tenants union of actual tenants. I mean, there are a huge number of tenants, and this is something that I think has great basis that we can walk.
The leadership is Lisa.
So one of the things that we've been working on has been to actually try to build a neighborhood coalition, and so distinguishing through the Unity Day, which brought together about 10 different organizations. So that's been kind of a challenge in kind of distinguishing what is our role as Occupy, but working, really trying to build a coalition that is not us, but is lots of other people, and the role that we can play in doing that the space issue clearly is something that for all of us, and we have, ironically, we had just started a conversation with St. Chipotle just before Occupy Sandy kind of emerged there, and that relationship has continued to a degree. We do use that space, and we will be doing some activities there. And so I think that, you know, and then also in working, I guess, posing a question, which is working with other struggles like the tenants, the issue of accompaniment versus where the organizers were smart way to tell you what to do. And so I think one of the roles that we've been able to play, most of us have a fair amount of political experience in Sunset Park. We're mostly kind of not quite the geriatric activists, I mean some younger people, but how we can bridge together between younger people who live in the neighborhood and who are involved in other things that might be Occupy related or not, with tenants who are undocumented immigrants from Central America who've lived in the neighborhood for 41 years but still are in some ways in a ghetto, so that what we can play in integrating people together.
Jane, I'm sorry, we're almost done, but maybe right at the end. Jane.
Okay, I'm just going to say this up front. I'm so glad I came to this. I knew when I came that somebody would put the chairs in a circle, and I want people to notice what a difference that makes. I mean, I really hate coming here because I know I'm going to have to sit in rows looking in the back of people's head, and all the attention is going to be focused at people who are designated as experts. And it colors the whole, and they say, join the conversation, and I say, what conversation? But anyway, so I need to say that. I think that, I just need to say I'm glad I'm here. It restores my faith in myself and my fellow human beings. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I wanted to respond to you have a lot of strong opinions and you throw them out like that. And I wanted to say, and that's okay, but I just want to say that I think that there should be a discussion about candidates for city council. I'd be real interested in talking about what kind of, I think that we tend to give elected officials more power than they actually have. And I would like to explore that so that we create a we that has more control over those elected officials and what they actually stand for.
Before you go just yet, sorry.
The second thing is the whole issue of media. It's very easy to reject mainstream media. There is nothing easier in the world. I happen to have a print subscription to the New York Times, gladly. I think people should be, I think this process is open enough and loose enough so that people can do what they feel capable of doing vis-a-vis any kind of media. And at the same time, I think that we need to learn to be creatively critical of the progressive press, because the progressive press does not cover this. It will cover Hugo Chavez's death, but they will not cover the process of the Venezuelan Revolution. And anyway, I'm really glad to be here. And there's this great article in Times that everybody should read. The headline is, Elite in China, Molded in Part by Tiananmen. It is amazing.
By the way, I didn't say to attack the mainstream media, ignore them if they're not paying attention.
We don't have to discuss it further.
Never mind.
We can discuss it.
Eleanor and Nellie are each going to get a last word, and everyone will be contacted again for a follow-up on this. I think this is going to be up on occupyastorialic.org, and I think we should stay here long enough for 2 minutes to take the group picture. We've got 25 people here, and we should feel good about ourselves. You heard what Jane said. She feels very good that she came here. So, Eleanor, sorry for saying, do it in 30 seconds.
Last words, Nicholas raised the question of elections. I think if we continue to keep going and we're really doing our work, this is something we're going to have to address as a movement. Because if we don't think the revolution is happening tomorrow, and we are trying to take up real concrete issues on the ground for people in neighbourhoods, what our legislators do is important. And if we don't field our own candidates, then what we're talking about is just putting pressure on the existing legislators. And that is a choice we have to discuss. Are we going to go out and field our own candidates, or are we going to end up putting pressure on the best Democrats in the field, or and I'm firmly behind the idea that Occupy should be fielding candidates. Again, Socialist Alternative Group I'm in Seattle, we raised this within Occupy Seattle. We couldn't get an agreement to run an Occupy candidate. We ran our own candidate, a Socialist Alternative, somebody who'd been involved in Occupy Seattle. Her slogan was for the 99%. And she got, not only did she get 30% of the vote, but she got it on the basis of 200 people who weren't members of Socialist Alternative going out and knocking doors and campaigning. These were people from the Occupy movement because Occupy didn't have a candidate. They rallied to the decent candidate that was running. We believe this could be replicated. This is last year. We're running her again for City Council this year. That was for like a larger city. You know, we're quite optimistic we might actually win, but even if we don't, the point is, on election day, you have somebody actually out there knocking doors and at polling stations saying, we really can challenge this system. This is when ordinary people are thinking about politics, you know, aside from flashpoint moments.
Nellie?
And summing up, so I believe there was a flyer floated around where someone had proposed a people's assembly, and I suggest that we do that. We come from our different communities with very different and separate realities, and that has to be recognized. I personally am not going to endorse any Democratic Party candidate, not something that I do, but that is not to say that that is not a viable strategy for another neighborhood. But I do believe a people's assembly, something that was talked about for a long time, is necessary at this point as we look at sustainability, how we move forward, what those issues are going to be, what our agenda is going to be, what our objectives is going to be.
Thank you, Nellie, Eleanor, Sophia, everybody. We have 25 people here. Why don't we all just get together for one group picture? No, yes, we should feel together. Belly?
Now, thought you had introduced me. My name is Nellie Hester Bailey, and I am one of the co-founders of Occupy Harlem General Assembly, but just Occupy Harlem. Well, my presentation is going to be somewhat different in terms of the unique set of circumstances that I came into this, and that Occupy Harlem emerged out of a whole set of circumstances and contradictions in the historic community of Harlem. And this is Central Harlem, which is known as Black Harlem, the Harlem Renaissance, as distinguished from West Harlem, which is much more ethnically diverse, and where Columbia University has expanded its campus, its $6 billion campus, 18 acres. And Central Harlem, as in contrast to East Harlem, which is SPOHA, as the real estate development has called East Harlem. No, SPAHA, Spanish Harlem, SPAHA. North Harlem, NOHA. South Harlem, South SOHA. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we're dealing with, but that shows you at least we'll have some levity here just in terms of the very difficult and, on the other hand, serious circumstances that we're in. As we know, I mean, just to be candid about it, the New York City real estate industry controls the political apparatus in this city. The New York Times is a real estate developer. They're landlords, and also all of the major newspapers. Columbia University, that even the Daily News was described in its blaring headlines, land grab in East Harlem. So this all goes to lay out a framework, if you will, a foundation, if you will, of the difficult situation and obstacles that we face. None more so, and I hope obviously I can speak candidly, than the Black misleadership class in Harlem and its tremendous hold over independent forces through largely funding. If you're a non-for-profit organization, you're a non-governmental organization, you look for funding, and that funding is secured through the elected officials. And if they give you funding, then obviously it's a quid pro quo relationship. You don't criticize us, we're the good guys, as they continue to sell out the community to the powerful real estate industry that fills their coffers. So it's not just unique to Harlem, but it's all over the city. But however, in central Harlem, that had been earmarked for intensive gentrification push out by the Bloomberg administration, and even prior to that, because capturing Harlem is of paramount importance. It's near every major transportation hub for the east side, for the west side, for the airport, to the major bridges. It's all there. So it's an important piece of real estate for the New York City plutocracy, the oligarchy, to have control of that. And also with the city wanting to bring in 1 million new people, they got to go somewhere. And the rents are so prohibitive below 96th Street, where people are paying $3,500 for a bedroom apartment or even more, or a studio apartment or even more. So now let me just tell you quickly how this relates to what is happening in Harlem, and why there was such an overwhelming response to Occupy Harlem General Assembly, the first that we held, first meeting we held in October of 2011. Over 250 people showed up because of all of these reasons, this background that I gave you. They were sick and tired of the Blackness leadership class. Charlie Rangel was, Congressman Charles Rangel was just coming off this, not incredible, everybody knew it, this scandal that involved a real estate owner or developer who had given him an apartment for his campaign office. So the cynicism and just being fed up with the political establishment was there. And so they all came out to that meeting. And we subsequently had 3 meetings after that. We were faced with the problem of sustainability. How do we sustain the organization without any resources? Because the churches in Harlem just don't open up. They're closed during the week and they're open on Sundays. So space, securing space was a tremendous problem, one that we were not able to resolve. I applied for funding for Occupy, from Occupy Wall Street, but I did not receive any of that, any funding whatsoever. And then also there is another factor here. If I could have two more minutes, please. That I think was uniquely peculiar to Harlem and other black communities, and that was we're living in the age of Obama. I mean, that was it. And when you're talking about the 1% versus the 99%, where those people, but not those people, but rather supporters of Obama, and the majority of African Americans supported Obama. And so one had to tread this fine line between the Democratic Party, and remember, on the side of the Democratic Party is the Harlem Initial Leadership class, getting money from the real estate developers for their campaign coffers. And so obviously there is a parallel, but how do you begin to talk about it and approach it so that people are not turned off, or one is not perceived as being anti-Obama? So it's a very tight and difficult line that one has to walk, and so we were confronted with that dilemma as well. But nevertheless, we pursued and proceeded, because most of the people in Harlem knew that in 2007 I had sponsored a number of critical thinking meetings in the community on Obama, and we were very critical of him and saw him at that time and expressed it so that he would be yet another tool and leader of U.S. imperialism, which obviously he has turned out to be that. But at the time when we started 211 and Occupy Wall Street, one had to have a cautionary approach to this, lest you would turn off a lot of people. Because remember, they're fed up with the black misleadership class, the politicians who are selling them out, but somehow or another, they had compartmentalized the role of Obama in all of this, right? So anyway, so I just wanted to tell you some of the things that we were faced with. But nevertheless, let me tell you about a number of actions that we did that we thought were very, very important. One, in pointing out those obvious contradictions that I just mentioned to you. Obama came to Harlem at a very upscale, gentrified restaurant. It's the Red Rooster, and the owner and chef is of some world renown. He worked for the White House, Marcus Samuelson. It's one of the biggest, most successful gentrified places in Harlem. Well, the president came there for a $38,000 plate dinner. Well, the medium income, the annual medium income in Harlem is only about $28,000. So that was a huge disconnect, and we thought, like, okay. So here is an illustration of one of those contradictions that we were faced with, and we wanted how we're going to deal with that. So we had a demonstration, much to the chagrin of the Harlem establishment. I called them the managerial class, but we had a demonstration. It was successful. It was reported in the Amsterdam News. And then from there, we had a demonstration against Obama, and this is all Occupy Harlem. And that was when the president was at the famous Apollo Theater, and many of you may remember when he was there, he sort of he sang or sort of crooned this Al Green hit, let's stay together or something like that. Anyway, and he just sent everybody wild. It was sort of like the fever of the Beatles or something like that. He sent everybody. So while he was in there singing doing his Al Green number in imitation, we were outside demonstrating against the National Defense Authorization Act. Of course, the president slipped in and passed, and that was on New Year's Eve, and so we were outside doing that, and we thought that was very important. And I pause here to say, I don't know of anyone else that I've heard from across the country who protested against President Obama in such close proximity of him being at an event than what we did in Harlem at that demonstration. We participated in the May Day, and we did our endorsement there. Another large action that we took was Stop and Frisk, and that was with the End Mass Incarceration and Stop and Frisk, a national movement that was started by Cornel West and Carl Dix. And so in October, was October of last year, October of last year, we were arrested in front of the 32nd Police Precinct in Harlem. It was largely a symbolic action. They arrested all of us, about 35 people in total. We went to jail, included Cornell, Carl Dix, Reverend Phelps of Riverside Church, any number of folks, and so we were in jail for about 8 or 10 hours or something like that. And so we did that. So we have tried to make the organization and the existence of the organization, absent any physical infrastructure, of being relevant to the issues local as well as national. So that's it. Thank you.
I just had one question. You had this initial surge of 250 people show up, and that happens, that's a lot. I mean, that's probably the highest number I've ever heard. And that happens with a lot of groups when they first start. And you know, and then it becomes difficult to sustain that, even if people
Absolutely.
are not against it. You know, they remain friendly to the idea, but they just stop showing up as much. And you know, what have you experienced with that since the 250?
Well, it was exactly as you described. We were able to have a series of meetings. Sebutwe came up, I think 3 or 4 meetings, but money was very tight, and I had to pay the church. So there was only so much digging into my own personal pocketbook that I could afford. So we were just at a loss. And generally, what has happened, and perhaps some of you have experienced this, is that there was one church that always opened its doors, and that was St. Mary's. Always. But they have a new minister there now who's like a financial manager, and he wants $100 an hour. And so that was space, community space, that was on record for decades as open space for the community for progressive causes. But that is no more, because actually, I shouldn't say 100, he just said it was 75, which is like 100 to me. So that was it. And so again, when you went around to the churches and you begged, and I was hoping we would get our big chance from Occupy Wall Street, because they gave a large amount of money to this person in Harlem for some boiler or whatever, but I don't know, there's questions about where it actually went. So we were sort of desperate, and it was not sustainable, the money part of the revenue part of it coming from the members. And people would give, and some people gave generously, but it was not enough. And I think the last meeting that we've had, we've been in contact via email, and I think when we posted some stuff on the website, which was really Harlem Anti-War, and we just created a space for Occupy Harlem there. But we had a Twitter page, and I think we had Facebook, and we still interact with that. But it was I just wanted to add what you said. It opened up even in Harlem this dialogue, because now what's part of the American lexicon is the 1% and the 99%. And even though people continue to skate around Barack Obama, and they cannot be decisive in their criticism of his policies, even as they impact on the black community, as we are going to see it through cuts in Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and veteran benefits, the closing of the post office, which started before him. People continue to be reticent about criticizing him, but it's getting better and better and better every day. Those contradictions as they reveal themselves, and that the truth cannot be denied. And part of the euphoria, the Obama euphoria, is slowly dissipating. It's done, and so we're hopeful for that, but it's a hard task at best of keeping Occupy Harlem going, but we try as much as possible. And currently we're doing a little work around Haiti, not clothes and all of the other goods or donations to Harlem, but the UN troops out of Haiti for themselves. Defending Haiti is defending ourselves, the sweatshops, and so we turn our attention to that around education, as well as the issue of Assata Shakur, who now has a $2 million bounty on her head, courtesy of the state of New Jersey, as well as the U.S. government.
Excuse me. Sorry.